Good morning.
There we go.
We'll be right with you. We haven't quite started yet.
No problem.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 8th. We're in the chamber with a full slate of commissioners, the administrator, the clerk of the board. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the Potts and Associates legislative update.
Well, good morning. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me here today. The big topic right now, obviously we've made it through two cutoffs, made it through the policy cutoff, and then also through the first fiscal cutoff. The next cutoff here for bills, which is the last day for bills to be heard in the Chamber of Origin, is going to be the 15th. And that's where, if they haven't passed across the chambers, they're probably not going to unless they're necessary to implement the budget, and we'll get to that in a minute. The big thing that's coming out here today is we're going to see the transportation budget. There's a lot of talk around it, even when it comes out, it'll have to wade through it, but the conversation right now in terms of the transportation budget and what we should expect, conversations with TIB and the crab board and everybody, and just in general, working with Hvac and everybody who's got their ears to the ground here, we're not expecting much money in the transportation budget at all for counties or cities. And it looks kind of like what it sounds like is we're going to see some money put towards, for example, culverts, but only the culverts that were mandated to be rectified by the court and the state portion of those culverts. So we're not entirely sure if there's any money coming to the counties for culverts. Some of that stuff may be put into budget provisos. Right now, it sounds like they've got about $84 million in bonds and over $124 million in requests. So there's going to be a lot of trimming, no matter how you cut it. There's possibility here that because the state's general fund budget is really big, they got more on the sales tax and everything than they had initially planned for. So this is basically going to be a budget transfer into the transportation budget. So there's talk that we will see some budget provisos even in the other budgets here, capital or operating budget, that will take care of some of the local options on transportation funding. The big thing that we're really planning on seeing is they're not talking like there's going to be much money for preservation and maintenance, in the counties. And one of the big concerns is if it comes out how we've been told it's going to come out, and it passes that way, this could kind of be the way it is for quite a few years until they can get back around and rework it. So those are the two big concerns we have with the budget. Again, we really don't know what that's gonna look like until it comes out. From the governor's office, they're talking about putting in some budget provisos to talk specifically about addressing riparian areas. No idea exactly what those look like. There is some talk, in terms of transportation, if there's a county project that aligns with something the state's doing, say right next to each other, or the roads butt up together. They're talking about, funding the projects where it makes sense to use shared assets. Again, hearsay. We're kind of in a tough spot, when you talk about the capital budget, trying to bring some funding down to the counties. It's just at the rate that they fund things, as we all know, it's just very, very, very hard for us to get anything done. So as it sits right now, we've talked about in terms of budgets and compromises as we come into the end of session. It's really sounding like at this point that there probably won't be any compromise offered or asked for or proposed in any way, shape, or form. Majority's party is just going to try and get it done on their own and get the budgets through and get everything passed. We'll see how that goes, but it definitely means that they're going to have to get their caucus together and all on one, at least on one issue. So that's kind of the long and short of the budgets. We will have more, after today coming around. If you guys, once the transportation budget comes out, not all the counties are on the same page. Some of them are going to be in support of it because there's special projects, specifically for the larger counties and where the larger municipalities sit, Spokane, Seattle, Tacoma, Bellingham, Bellevue, things like that, Vancouver, that may bring some of those counties in line and to support the transportation package. Had a meeting with Axel at the Association of Counties yesterday and most of the individual county lobbyists. I think Hvac will be asking just in general, to take a concerns position. But once we see, what the budget looks like, that'll be kind of something that we'll go with the flow. So beyond that, most of the bills that we had that were big concerns for us, specifically riparian areas, and the bills that would have really hurt our area. For example, there's 5727, which was the one you guys were asking if they applied to the canals, and basically that bill died publicly and privately. Any of the salmon recovery bills, they just couldn't bring around. So they're going to try and put some stuff into the budget. So we'll be watching that. So with that where it is there anything you guys have been watching that you would like for me to speak to, or anything that you want to look at here as we come into the end of this week?
Commissioners?
Hey, Zach, this is Commissioner Peck. 1799 in the House is the landfill and organics bill that would radically change how food waste is disposed of, forcing it away from landfills into composting operations. And as you know, it's a massive bill with huge implications. So my question is, have you heard anything in the last 3-4 days on 1799? Is it moving at all?
So it's in rules. Now that said, there's a lot of conversation behind this bill. Specifically, it works well for, say, King County. They have the facilities to handle that. Obviously, it doesn't really work well out in the rural areas. So they are working on, some possible substitute again or amendments, an option on it, but there's a lot of conversation around this bill and there's a lot of concern. So my guess is it'll probably sit in rules until they figure out exactly how they want to do it.
Okay, well, it only affects certain size counties. Franklin would be one of them, and it would be principally for the counties concerned, the unincorporated urban growth area, and then of course it would affect the city as well. I'm asking because here in Pasco, for example, we don't have a recycling program, and not necessarily advocating for one, but this could require one. The other question I had was on 1848, which is the body cams bill for law enforcement. it provides money, but no one seems to know the answer yet as to whether or not there's retroactivity. If we bought that kind of equipment in the previous legislative year, are those funds retroactive? Can we use them to reimburse? Do you happen to know?
I do not know that, but I will ask and get back to you on that one. That's a good question.
Okay, and then real quickly, on 1965, which is the Hvac's levy bill, has that been exec out, or is it hasn't moved to the floor as far as I know?
That one, as it sits right now, is still in committee.
Okay.
They've referred it to rules, but it's just sitting there.
Okay, it's been referred to rules. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Moore.
No problem.
Yes, Zach, has there been any new information on the country of origin labeling for beef products?
As of right now, there's not going to be any bills or anything that are going to come this year to address that. It's just a conversation within Department of Agriculture at the moment.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Just a couple questions, Zach. The legislative power given to the governor here for these mandates, where's that at? I see it's in here in a couple different areas. Has that got any traction to rein in his executive power?
Well, it's got enough traction that he's mad.
Good.
He's pretty unhappy about all these things, and from what I hear, kind of stomping around a little bit that they even are talking about trying to do this.
Now, that's
So,
bipartisan?
it's obviously scary enough to him that it's bugging him.
Is it
Take that
bipartisan?
for what it is.
Zach?
They do have support on both sides of the aisle. I mean, obviously, you're not seeing your Democratic leaders jump onto it.
Okay.
It's a question that they're going to have to address. It's kind of one of those that you can't not. If you don't, it's it's a power grab, and so there's just no good way to ignore it at this point. They're going to have to do something or say something about it.
Okay, and then the other concern I have is this HJR 4209, adding a new section to the Washington State Constitution regarding the conservation and protection of state natural resources.
Yeah. There's mixed bag reviews on that one. I think this kind of comes back to what the tribe's biggest complaint about the VSP really is, that voluntary stewardship program. One of the things, and this is a federally established standard, as you're doing this stuff, there's no actual consideration of rehabilitating or repairing an area. And so one of the things that they're trying to go at right now, so let's say you have a stream going through just a wasteland, you only have a duty to maintain the wasteland. You don't have to bring it back to a beautiful meadow. And so they're trying to bring that around and come around into this where they're going to be able to actually, say, hey, we need to repair this. And so this is one of the first steps that they're trying to go on. A constitutional amendment right now, probably not very viable.
Okay. That's all I got.
Just because of the votes required to pass it.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Anything
No
else?
problem at all. That's what I've got for right now. We'll be following up about the budget. May kind of touch bases with you guys and see what your thoughts are on it after we get a breakdown done, but that'll be, as the week goes on here.
Hey, Zach, Commissioner Peck, there's a couple of different bills regarding the governor's executive powers. One of them is sponsored by representative from the Democrat Party, and I think last check, the other 5 or 6 co-sponsors are all Dems as well. I mentioned this in a previous meeting. There's also one that's got some bipartisan support. Given the level of interest, would you continue to track those each week and maybe shoot us an email if you see any of those bills move that have to do with the delegated powers to the governor?
Absolutely. That's not a problem at all.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Looks like I get to let you guys move on to the next one. So I will be in touch, and we'll talk with you guys here on the next go-round.
Thank you, Zach.
All right. Thank you.
Alrighty, with that, we'll move down to the approval of minutes, November 9th, December 7th, and December 28th. Is there any additions, revisions, or corrections?
No.
Okay, they pass. Office business, approval of warrant registers.
Move for approval of fund expenditures in a total amount of $649,536.86 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll in the total amount of $1,056,722.57 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the auditor's office.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. With that, we'll move down to the approval of the consent agenda. I believe there's 7 items.
Move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 7.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval of the consent agendas 1 through 7. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that takes us down to the commissioner administrator updates. Keith.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Several things going on in the past week, some of a continuation of prior projects. Obviously, Hvac and legislation is taking up some amount of time to follow what's going on there. Been doing some interviews for our Public Works Director position that's open. We'll be talking about that a little later today. Working with some of our regional partners regarding the Colville Tribe's request for support for some of the work that they're doing on the land acquisition in north of Pasco, working with the port and the city and a couple of other entities as well on that agreement. Then spending some time on the landfill agreement that we're going to hear today for approval.
Okay, Commissioner Peck.
As is typical for this time of year, a lot of time spent going through bills and making calls and trying to get a sense of which bills are going to impact Franklin County and how much. Unfortunately, sometimes you put a lot of time into those and then the bill drops dead in the middle of the process. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. But Friday had the Hvac Legislative Steering Committee meeting, which is where we take about 2 hours every Friday afternoon and we go through dozens of bills, and Hvac takes positions for and against on behalf of the counties. People have questions about specific bills, they're welcome to give me a call or shoot me an email and I can help track those. That's part of the LSC function. Greater Columbia Behavioral Health Board had an executive meeting last Thursday. Had the Hvac Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday. The Legislative Steering Committee yesterday had an hour with a representative from NACO who, Keith, were you on that call?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Johnson was on the call, so he can speak more to it probably than I can, but went into pretty exhaustive detail on the Federal Recovery Act funds, ARPA and others, and how they can be spent. The important takeaway from that meeting was that the Treasury Department has, in my opinion, greatly relaxed the rules on how those funds can be used, and I think that's really good news for our current expense budget and for reimbursing expenses that we can connect to the pandemic. And again, I'll defer to Mr. Johnson on more details, but I think it was generally very good news. That's it. Thanks.
I have no updates this week.
Say that again, Rocky.
I said I don't have any updates.
Keith, did you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of detail. I don't know how much you want to go into at this juncture. I'd say the important piece that Commissioner Peck just referred to was the relaxing of the requirements around lost revenue. Under the interim rule that we were operating under, there was a calculation that we had to go through. The auditor's office assisted in preparing that estimate. We calculated that we would lost about $1.9 million and could defend that to the Treasury, and that was our initial starting point, as I said, under the interim rule. However, under the final rule, they said counties can allocate up to $10 million of their proceeds for essentially lost revenue or general government purposes. So instead of the 1.9 million that we thought we were going to be restricted to, it's now up to 10 million. That makes it much easier for us to decide how we're going to use those funds. So we've got a number of different proposals that I'm working on. Hopefully we'll be able to bring those shortly to you. One of which we've talked a little bit about is the need for upgrading our electrical and lighting and HVAC systems out at the Hvac Center. That's going to be a pretty big dollar item. Some similar work here at the courthouse complex, but some smaller projects as well. But we now have a lot more flexibility in how we do it. The reporting requirements are a little more onerous than I had anticipated. We had our first report was due the end of October. We hadn't really spent much money out of it then, so it was a pretty easy report. The second report was due on the 31st of January. That took a little more calculating and record review to get that report filed, but it was filed timely. Our next one is due, I believe, in it's either end of March or end of April, but we'll be prepared to provide those reports to Treasury that we have to do now quarterly through the end of 2026.
All right, thank you. Veterans Advisory Board, we have a bi-county meeting coming up here, hopefully to get somebody in place to help the veterans get the aid they need. Ben Franklin Transit Operation and Maintenance. We had the board workshop for the building at Ben Franklin Transit, and the cost is estimated 17 million for it. And then I got a call from the chairman of the Greater Columbia Behavioral Health, and he asked if they could come and present this next week at our next meeting. So I think we might want to get that on about the Lord's, what's going on there, and they would like to come in and present. So that's basically all I had for the week. With that, we'll move down to public comment. Anybody for public comment?
Yes, thank you. As you know, today is election day, and as I just had my 57th birthday, I had to re-register my license, and when I did so, I was registered twice. I have 2 ballots, one with my middle initial, one with my middle name. They asked for my Social Security when I renewed my license. So how am I registered twice? This is not the fault of the auditor. This is the DMV. And if this happened to me, you know that's happened several times. We know from a Glenn Morgan expose that the homeless are being registered to vote by these community groups, and then they never see their ballot, and yet when they look, they voted. And we also know from people that go to get their citizenship that they're denied because when they registered to get a license, they were automatically registered to vote, and so the ballot comes to their home and they don't know that they can't vote. And they vote, and now they're denied citizenship. So Another thing is my daughter was married 7 years ago and moved away. She's lived in Minnesota and Utah twice. They're in Utah now getting his master's. And I still get her ballot. So I'm just bringing this. I don't know which ballot. I'm going to go ask the auditor. Also, my daughter just got another jury summons, who does not live here. And so I'm going to be going to my auditor because I don't know which ballot I'm allowed to vote with. I don't want to get in trouble. I mean, maybe that's something that you guys could answer. I'm only bringing this to your attention because I think there needs to be an audit of the DMV of this state to find out how many people they're automatically registering to vote, how many people maybe are registered twice. Is my first ballot canceled? I don't know. I mean, I got them within a week of each other, so just pointing that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone?
No one on the phone yet.
Good morning. My name is Lori Hills. I am a Franklin County resident. I wanted to say thank you for recognizing that we are all worth 1/10%. In passing the ordinance establishing the sales and use tax for chemical dependency, mental health treatment, and therapeutic court programs and services. I was proud to witness all three of you coming together for such an important cause. I still get goosies thinking about it. I follow your meetings online, thank you, and I have not heard any more conversation about what is next. I do, however, hear you all speak and promote transparency. Thank you. This board will be brand new. Brand new. We're it. No excuses, right? We will be here when it starts. This is our decision. We are the start, actually. Successful implementation should start with transparency, good planning, and discussion. April 1st, 52 days away. By the way, I will proudly go shop on April 1st and drag my friend Angie Manarola in Franklin County that day, and it will be the first time I can ever remember smiling about paying my taxes. Thank you all again for all you do.
Hi, I'm Angie Manarola, and as you all know previously, I don't like to be in front of the microphone, so sorry about the shaky voice. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the misinformation has been kind of a buzzword going on nationally, county-wise, and I feel like it spreads when accurate information isn't out there for people in the community to easily access. So I just want to encourage each of you to get all that information out there, not just about the mental health policies, but about everything going on in the county. I know that's a lot to do, but it's what you guys were elected to do. And I really appreciate that personally, and I think you guys are like this with every member of the community, being accessible to visit with your community members and your constituents and listen to their concerns. And please be transparent in everything so that we can accurately give out the information to people so that the accurate information is what's spreading, not misinformation. And I appreciate what each of you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone, Keith?
Yes, we do have one caller.
Okay.
Good morning, is this Christy?
Yes,
You have the floor for 3 minutes.
thank you. My name's Christy Voss, and I'm a resident in Franklin County and a parent at North Franklin School District. And I've heard many times from commissioners, Department of Health, and everyone in our local community that there's nothing anyone can do and it's not in your hands, but I'm urging you to reach out and continue reaching out to your contacts in Olympia and put pressure on our governor to end the mask mandates in Washington, starting with our schools. I know that we have lost a lot of power locally, but I'm hoping that you guys will continue to work on getting that back and ending the governor's emergency powers. And that's that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, George Dockstetter, Self Landing Road. Zach said something about there's 50% more in requests than there's funds for roads. I'm going to reiterate again, the county commissioners need to start looking forward instead of at today, because we've got a train wreck coming with all the truck traffic, let alone the car traffic. Amazon's 1,500 people, and they've got an option for another site. So that could be 2,200 people just in one spot. And we need to do something about getting another bridge across North Franklin so we can alleviate some of this mess. Go sit out at the golf course at 5 o'clock at night and watch how slow it moves across there by 4th Street right now and what it's going to be in a year from now. So I'd like you to start looking forward, work with the city, work with Benton County, West Richland, and let's get together and start getting our request in for some money. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Do you have one more caller?
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Simmons.
Yes,
You have the floor for 3 minutes, please.
thank you. Thank you, commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to talk. My name is Steve Simmons, and I just want to make a comment of the mental health and Hvac. I am grateful that the county is taking steps towards helping with mental health and with our the situation that we have in the Tri-Cities. The only thing I wanted to say was that concerning the tax, that I wish instead of having it been voted on by the commissioners, I understand that we held commissioner meetings and public discussion was given, but I wish that it had been given through a vote to the people and let the county decide as a whole. That way you protect that we have representation and we're not taxed without representation instead of just having the board decide, the commissioner board decide on their own. That's all I had. Thank you very much for the hard work you guys do.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move down to administration office business. Keith?
Yes, I mentioned earlier some work that we've been doing on the Pascal landfill. This has been the subject of a very long process, very long discussion with the Department of Ecology and with parties that were involved as defendants in litigation related to the old Pascal landfill. Through that process over the past couple of years, Sean Sant and myself have been in discussions with outside counsel and with the Department of Ecology. We have reached a tentative agreement that our Public Works Department will oversee some of the initial cleanup work Sean, you may wish to come to the microphone to further explain details. However, basically what we have agreed to with the Department of Ecology is they have set aside some of their funds to help us pay for our oversight responsibility. Once those funds are exhausted, then the remaining cost of cleanup will be borne by other parties that put material in the landfill that have caused it to be the environmental hazard that it is. There were, back in the, I guess, the 40s and 50s, post-war, Pasco had a landfill. There were a number of parties that put chemical drums, mostly empty, but some had chemicals in them in this facility. Those things have rusted out and are starting to leak, and we're wanting to make sure that we contain any spills or want to make sure that we contain any spills that are going into the soil or the groundwater there. So that's the purpose of the cleanup effort, and that will begin as soon as the commissioners approve this agreement that we have with the Department of Ecology.
Just to give a little bit more on the background, this has been going on. We've had discussions with the other parties from the industrial waste group, the landfill group. There's really two main parts of the landfill out there. Is one, all the household waste that we all toss to the curb and gets picked up. Currently, that's work's being done by Basin Disposal, but back in the day, all of that household waste would go to one part of this landfill site, and then the other section, as Mr. Johnson mentioned, would be the typically the 55-gallon barrel drums. There's approximately, I believe, 38,000 of those barrels containing various waste in those drums. A facility has been constructed to begin the process of basically draining those drums, collecting, separating, and eventually to haul and dispose of those waste in a manner consistent with what Ecology would approve. Because Franklin County is a municipality, we are eligible for certain grant funding that comes from the Department of Ecology. We sought a few years ago, that has been our pursuit, is to try to get Ecology to agree to fund Franklin County to help facilitate, offset the cost. So we have been able to secure that. This agreement basically brings now that agreement of committal of $600,000 from Department of Ecology that will go to Franklin County for our responsibility in overseeing the cleanup work. We do have subcontractors. We've also been in contact with Craig Erdman, kind of been able to get him up to speed on the project and what would be required of Public Works as far as facilitating payment and oversight at the waste site. We think this is a good resolution for the county now that we have some funding. The duration of this contract is to be completed by June 30th of next year. It can be completed earlier, but that's a pretty ambitious and frankly a targeted contract and goal for us based on the tasks that are outlined in the agreement. We believe that we can complete those tasks. There is a provision in the contract that we can extend it if necessary, but we also believe that our responsibility will essentially be ended once we've used that $600,000. So it really should not encumber any additional funds out of the county than what we have available through this grant, as well as we have some remaining funds from the settlement when the original landfill contractor had filed for bankruptcy. The county received approximately $300,000 as part of that settlement. We've used some of those proceeds over the years for studies, helping to conduct studies at the site to make sure that we'd have a workable plan. Because obviously our concern is this is our backyard. We want to be able to restore that property as best as we can so that we can start looking at potential future use of that site at some point. So it made sense for the county to be involved. So anyway, I'm just asking the commissioners to consider the agreement that has been provided. It does show Craig Erdman from Public Works as being the point of contact. He, and through his office, would connect with Department of Ecology for the reimbursements that would be submitted on a monthly basis.
So it says in here that Franklin shall furnish the necessary personnel, equipment, material, and/or services.
Yes.
We're hiring?
Yes, we already have actually a subcontractor in place that has begun the work. This is work that we're basically bringing to the table and part of our global resolution with the Hvac group, which we anticipate to be coming before the board in the near future.
And he gave us a bid saying that he can get this work done for $600,000 or less?
What we are essentially doing is we're providing $600,000 worth of work as part of the contract. So once that money has been expended, our part of the contract is done. And the estimate was done, the June 30th estimate was done based on the monthly costs that have been going on a regular basis already.
So if it's not complete, then we just leave it the way it is when we're out of money?
Our role will be complete by the end of June 30th of next year.
Whose responsibility is it if the work's not done by then?
The work will then be taken over by the remaining parties out on site. But as far as our task, the way this contract is laid out is that we are going to facilitate being able to complete all of the work that has been laid out through those tasks by next year, end of June.
So I guess my concern is what liabilities does the county retain after this July of next year deadline? If we expend the 600 and it's all spent on work under Appendix A, but it doesn't get the job done, are we legally, liability-wise, free and clear? And Hvac, the Industrial Waste Generators Group, absorbs it?
It's anticipated that we are going to have a secondary supplemental agreement here in the near future that we're going to be bringing back to the board that's going to address that very issue.
Okay.
So there's no guarantee that they're going to get the job completed?
This work that the contract lays out will be completed for the county by June 30th of next year, yes.
But the cleanup?
There's not going, the cleanup will continue to go on. The cleanup project is not going to be completed. This is for the tasks that are assigned solely what Franklin County is tasked to complete. Franklin County will complete those tasks by June 30th of next year. The cleanup site, I would anticipate, will continue on beyond that date.
Thank you.
And just for clarity, come July of next year, the county's obligation for cleanup is finished. We use the 600,000 from Ecology to do that. The actual work is done by a contractor. When we get to that point, who's going to own this landfill obligation going forward? Is it this industrial waste group, other participants, or?
Yeah, as the board may recall, there's other what we've referred to as POPs or potentially liable parties, and that includes the Hvac, the landfill group. There has been additional federal court action that has taken place between those two parties. They've worked out additional agreements between the two of them. We hope that we are also going to have in the next couple weeks a separate agreement that's going to address any kind of question about Franklin County's involvement after that.
So even if this doesn't all get completed, and correct me if any of this is not accurate, but worst case, some of the place gets cleaned up and it's done with 600,000 provided by Ecology, and it doesn't change our liability.
That's our anticipation, correct.
Okay.
This agreement here essentially is authorizing the receipt of the $600,000 to begin our part of the work.
It troubles me when you say it's our anticipation. That doesn't give clarity to the...
Well, as I said, there's different agreements with different parties that are going on. This agreement is solely limited to the Department of Ecology. This is just simply one piece of the puzzle. Even once we complete the secondary agreement that is going to be signed at a later time, that is addressing separate issues. This is for us to begin the work and to receive the $600,000 grant funding from Ecology.
This doesn't add anything to our liability by doing this. It actually relieves some of our liability by limiting it to the $600,000. And after, work that needs to be done after that phase is taken on by non-county entities. That's the agreement that we have with Ecology.
Are you asking for a vote of approval?
The vote of approval to authorize Craig Erdman to go ahead and sign off on behalf of the board so that we could begin that work with Ecology for receipt of the $600,000. The way these grant works, funding works is we complete the work in advance, we receive the invoices, we verify that that work has been done. We pass on those direct costs to Ecology. Ecology verifies that those are actually direct costs. We can't bill additional costs. So essentially what they're doing is they're just making sure that what we're billing for is actually work that was actually done on site. So we as a county, we anticipate what we will be doing is taking some of that remaining balance of that account that we have available to cover the cost of the first month's worth of work so that we could, pay the subcontractor on the case. We submit it, and based on the terms of the agreement, we should have money coming back to the county within 30 days. Once we submit invoices, and we've had meetings with Ecology, so Craig and his team are aware of what those requirements are so that we could have timely repayment reimbursements back from Ecology. And those reimbursements are anticipated to be the $600,000 by the end of June 30th of next year.
Is there a resolution that comes with this, or is this a verbal?
Because we have the actual contract before the commissioners, all as we were looking for is authorization for Mr. Erdman to go ahead and sign off on that. He is the point of contact from Public Works, and he has indicated that he's prepared to do so.
Okay, move for approval of interagency agreement between the State of Washington Department of Ecology and Franklin County Public Works. It's IAA number C as in Charlie 2200136 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Erdman, would you like to say anything on this?
Only that, this type of work that we've done.
And Mr. Chairman, while he's coming up, I just note the intent is to further authorize Mr. Erdman to sign on behalf of the county.
Yes.
This is not unusual work for our department. We've done similar type grants where we are kind of the middle person between Ecology or another agency and a subcontractor. We don't anticipate any problems executing this part of the county's obligation. It is mostly an oversight job and looking into the properness of the invoices. And I will have a meeting later this week with the consultant to go over exactly what that will entail. So as I said, we've done these sort of things before, and I don't anticipate any problems.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All righty, with that, we'll move on down to, Keith, is that it for administration office business?
Yes, sir.
Move down to public comment. Is there anybody for public comment?
I just wanted to, again, say I'm here without a mask as a protest against the unconstitutional and non-based in science face masks. I was going to kind of talk about what the CDC brought out was that the reason why the N95 masks work better than what some of you are wearing today is because it is aerosol. So what does that mean? You think of a spray paint can. I spray paint because I do weddings, so I'm creating things all the time. But sometimes I get spray paint cans that have a drip, so that's kind of the liquid, and it falls pretty quickly. So if someone sneezes and they have expectorant, that it'll probably go 3, maybe 4 feet, and then it eventually drops. with aerosol, it stagnates in the air, from what the scientists that I've listened to that specialize in health environment and PPEs. It stagnates in the air. So if someone sneezes through these masks, yeah, it'll stop the liquid, which would fall anyhow, but it doesn't stop the aerosol, which will live as long as the virus lives. So I think this virus lives 24 hours, so if someone sneezes or coughs, it's there for 24 hours. So these masks are useless, and I know that you have talked about that you're going to be redoing the HVA systems. I hope that has an ultraviolet light, because that is something that can kill the virus instantly. That's really the only thing, other than encouraging people to strengthen their immune system. There is nothing else that's good. Children with masks, listening to Christy Voss, and I believe her husband Clayton was here the week before. What is that children, if you go to the government website, they develop something called immune memory. And it's vital that they are exposed to viruses, because once they become adults, their immune systems will be compromised. They will not be strong, healthy adults. So these masks are actually harming not only their health, they are also harming their mental health. And as we know, that suicide attempts amongst young women are up 51%. So I encourage, if Christy's still listening or any parents are listening, please contact your legislatures. Out here, we have Mary Dye and we have Joe Schmick. I know different parts, there is Mark Clicker, and all of a sudden I can't think of his name, and he's a friend of mine. Anyhow, so the point is that you need to contact your legislatures, really have them put pressure, and have them use the science. Because right now, this is all about psychology and not about science. Let's keep the children muzzled. Let's tell parents that we control them and parents don't. So it's really not a good situation. So we need to take our power back. We can also protest the teachers union presidents, and I really encourage you to do that, because they're the ones that are really pushing for this. They have more power than the parents right now. Thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone? Keith?
No one on phone.
Okay, seeing none. We have an executive session, just one or two?
Just one.
Okay. You want to go through it, please?
Yes, I'd request an executive session, probably up to 10 minutes under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph G. Evaluate qualifications of applicant for employment or review the performance of a public employee. Would request that the board and myself and the clerk be allowed to participate.
Okay, we've come out of executive session, and we're back in the regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.